Hi everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm Mark Mazzatenta and I'm here to help strengthen your guitar skills. Today we're going to be talking about chord voicings. So what's a voicing? That just means that the player is deciding where to arrange the notes of a chord. So maybe you want one of those notes to be in the soprano, or maybe you want a certain note of that chord to be in the bass position, or others in between, in the middle of the texture like that. So that's what a voicing is. So if I take an E minor triad, that's one way to play it. But here's another voicing, or. Those are all voicings of an E minor triad. Now, if you start adding notes to that, like the ninth, that would be the note F sharp. I could put it on our high E string and play. Okay, now I have E minor 9. If I wanted to voice that a little differently, I could put that ninth on the 4th string and play this. Okay, that's just a different voicing of that E minor 9 chord. And that is the exact chord that the song New Year starts out with. So that's the song we're taking a look at today, and it comes from this Pat Metheny album, Unity Band. It's the opening track on this recording. I'm just going to play through it and then just point out some of the more interesting chords and chord voicings. So maybe you'll learn a different chord type or a new voicing today from this song. So here it is. E minor chord. All right, so I have some diagrams, chord charts, of some of the chords that I just played. So here you can see exactly how to play them. I'll talk about these in just a sec. There's one set. And here's another set. Okay, these are just specific shapes or voicings of some of these chords. And I wanted to point out some interesting things about some of these. So this first one, the E minor 9, that's what I talked about, where if you just think about how you would ordinarily play an E minor chord, it might be that. And then when you add extra tones, it's your job to decide where to put those. In this case, that ninth is on the 4th string. So you have your low E, B, F sharp, G, B, E. And that's a cool voicing because you have a half step, like in the middle texture of that chord, which that may not sound pretty to you, but this is very pretty. It has that shimmery kind of sound to it. So that's what's cool about that. he plays like, and it's a B chord. Again, that's interesting because the melody note is an F sharp, and he has the third below that. There's no low root, but then he adds, again, you have a half step. So that's the root, the B, and the major seventh is that A sharp. And you put that all together like that. Now the diagram is slightly different from that. If you look at the B major 7, the shape is a little different there. So I'm just showing you how you could play it with the root, low root on the bottom. That's a B major chord, B major 7, to be specific. All right, let's move on. After that arrival, it's got some major 7 chords. Now this one, I've heard him play that voicing a number of times on different songs. It's C sharp, F sharp, G, B, and sometimes the E on top. So it's this cool combination of open strings and fretted notes. Now that is just a fancy version of this, which you might be more used to. Okay, that's a C sharp half diminished chord. What he did was he added an F sharp to that, and he moved the fretted G to open, so that then he could have an F sharp below that. And once again, you get a half step. Are you seeing a little bit of a theme here with voicings? Okay, so that's this shape. C sharp minor 7 with a flat 5. Sometimes those are called half diminished chords. Kind of resolves it to an F sharp 7, which goes to B minor. Now that we need to take a look at. Okay, I've labeled that chord an E13 with a flat 9. See that little triangle shape? Okay, so E flat 13 is E, D, G sharp, C sharp. But he also has an F, which is a flat 9. So it's really juicy. Now you could label that D flat slash E if you wanted to use slash notation, right? Here's a D. Well, D flat would be a half step lower. You have the E in the bass, and now you have a D flat triad slash E in the bass. So you could label it like that. And he moves to an E minor 7 flat 5, and then to an A 7 flat 9. So it's not exactly where you would expect this to go, because you might expect it to go to like an A minor, something like that, but it doesn't. Now here's the next spot. That. It's a B, E, A, C. Down at the bottom here. It's a B7 chord, but with 2 tension notes in it, which then resolve a half step down. So if you ever have like a dominant 7th chord that you want to make a little bit more dissonant, here you can have 2 dissonant tones. You can have a sus4 and a flat 9. So if we do that to a B7, you might be familiar with this B7. Okay. So making it a sus4 would move this D sharp to an E. Then he also has a flat 9, which you could think about as just raising that root a half step. And now you don't have a normal B7 like this, but you have this, which resolves to the regular B7. So you have two tension notes here, and they resolve. The same thing's going to happen a little bit later in the tune with that same kind of like double dissonance. So let's see where we are here. I wanted to take a look at that because I've heard him use that A minor chord voicing in numerous songs as well, and that must be one of his favorite. Why wouldn't it be? It sounds so great. Okay, would you ever play an A minor chord like that? Probably not. But check out why it's so great. You have the root, third, the seventh, lowered seventh, the ninth, and then a high E on top, which is the fifth. Compare that to our normal A minor, and all of a sudden that sounds really plain compared to, okay, so that's a fancy A minor 9 chord, which you see the diagram of here. Just make sure you take a look at the fret numbers because sometimes they're higher up. Now remember how we talked about if you have a half step together in a chord, it can make it sound really sweet, kind of against maybe your normal thought about that. We have a B and a C together here, but in the context of everything else, it's beautiful. Okay, I'll go on. Okay, there's that double dissonant. It's a D7 chord, but it has a sus4 and a flat 9. So I'll isolate those. Here are the two dissonant notes. Where do they move next? They resolve a half step below where they were. Like that. And here you see the diagram for that. It's the same as what happened earlier with that B7 chord. So that's kind of a strong feature of some of these voicings. All right, those are the, I think the most interesting chord shapes and voicings that I wanted to share with you today on that piece. So try those out, everyone. I hope that gives you, some more tools that you can use in your own music, and it's really fun and satisfying to use those. Thanks for watching. I'll see you at the next video.